Ever pondered about who first unearthed the concept of friction? Let's start with the basics. Friction, in its simplest form, is the force that resists motion. Picture two objects, perhaps two stones, sliding against each other. That grating resistance you feel? That's friction. But it's not just about solid surfaces, oh no. Friction also plays out in fluid layers. Imagine a boat slicing through the water, or a gust of wind rustling through the leaves. That resistance, that opposition to movement, is friction in action. Now it's easy to say friction is a bit of a party pooper, always opposing motion and all, but it's more complex than that. There are different types of friction, each with its own set of rules. There's dry friction, fluid friction, lubricated friction, skin friction, and internal friction. Each of these types of friction plays a different role in our world and has its own unique characteristics. But here's where it gets really interesting. Friction isn't just a passive force, it can have significant consequences. When two objects rub against each other, friction converts kinetic energy, that's the energy of motion, into thermal energy, or heat. This is why your hands warm up when you rub them together. And there's more. Friction can cause wear and damage to components. It's the reason why your car tires wear down over time, or why the soles of your shoes thin out. But remember, without friction we wouldn't be able to walk or drive or do many of the things we take for granted. Friction is a non-conservative force, meaning that the work done against friction is path-dependent and mechanical energy is not conserved. The calculation of friction from first principles is difficult, often requiring empirical methods. Now that we understand what friction is, let's delve into the history of its discovery. The understanding of friction wasn't instant, it evolved over centuries. Imagine the early humans, noticing how tough it was to slide a rock across the ground compared to a patch of ice. They were witnessing friction, but they didn't have a name for it yet. They only knew that something was making their tasks difficult. As time passed, our ancestors started to gain a more substantial understanding of this mysterious force. They observed its effects, they conducted experiments, and they began to form theories. The understanding of friction was a pie being baked over centuries, with each scientist or researcher adding a new ingredient. One of the biggest breakthroughs was the realization that the calculation of friction from first principles was a daunting task. It wasn't something that could be easily measured or quantified. This led to a shift in approach. Instead of trying to calculate friction, scientists started observing it. They began to focus on empirical methods, relying on practical experience and observation rather than pure theory. Through these empirical methods they noticed patterns. They saw that the force of friction was related to the weight of the object and the nature of the surfaces in contact. They realized that friction could be both a friend and a foe, helping us walk on the ground without slipping, but also causing wear and tear on machinery. But despite these observations, the true nature of friction remained elusive. It was like a puzzle with missing pieces. The physical mechanisms behind friction, the reasons why it occurred, were still a mystery. But this didn't deter the scientific community. Instead, it spurred them on. In the years that followed, scientists and researchers around the world dedicated their lives to studying friction. They conducted countless experiments, they developed theories, and they made significant contributions towards our understanding of this enigmatic force. From the early ages, scientists and researchers started to make significant contributions towards understanding friction. And as we'll see in the next scene, their efforts would pave the way for some of the most important scientific discoveries in history. The concept of friction as we know it today is the result of the collective work of several brilliant minds. Our understanding of friction, this ever-present force that resists movement, is no simple revelation. Instead, it's a complex tapestry woven by some of the greatest scientific minds over centuries. Let's start with Guillaume Amonton, a French scientific instrument maker and physicist. In the late 17th century, Amonton proposed two basic laws of dry friction. First, the force of friction is directly proportional to the applied load. Second, the force of friction is independent of the apparent area of contact. His work was revolutionary, providing a foundation for future studies on friction. Next we have Charles-Augustin de Coulomb, another French physicist and military engineer. Coulomb's work in the late 18th century extended Amonton's laws, adding that the frictional resistance is proportional to the hardness of the surfaces. His work gave birth to the concept of Coulomb friction, a model still widely used in engineering and physics. The 19th century saw the work of John Leslie, a Scottish mathematician and physicist. Leslie was intrigued by Amonton's second law, and he conducted experiments to prove that the frictional force is indeed independent of the contact area. His findings further solidified this fundamental law of friction. As we moved into the 20th century, the focus of friction research shifted to the microscopic level. Scientists began to explore the intricacies of the contact area between surfaces. This period of research led to new insights into how shear stress and contact area interact to create friction. Our understanding of friction has been a journey, a slow burn of discovery and refinement. But each scientist, each researcher who added to this body of knowledge played a critical role. Their empirical observations, their tireless study, have helped shape our understanding of this fundamental force. The contributions of these scientists have laid the groundwork for our current understanding of friction. And as we continue to explore, to question, who knows what other secrets friction might reveal. With the foundations laid by early scientists, the 20th century saw a focus on the physical mechanisms behind friction. The era was marked by a deluge of research, unlocking the intricate details of friction and further refining our comprehension of this ubiquitous force. This period was characterized by a shift in perspective. Rather than just observing the effects of friction, researchers in the 20th century began to delve into the microscopic realm. They began to explore the minute area of contact between surfaces. It was found that the actual contact area is much smaller than what we see with our naked eye. The surfaces, no matter how smooth they appear, are in fact riddled with bumps and indentations on a microscopic scale. These asperities, as they are called, are the real points of contact, and hence the real players in the game of friction. Parallel to this, another significant revelation was the relationship between shear stress and contact area. Shear stress, in simple terms, is the force that causes layers or parts of a material to slide off each other. The research found that as shear stress increased, the actual contact area decreased. This might seem counterintuitive at first, but it's a fundamental aspect of the modern understanding of friction. These discoveries, while seemingly esoteric, have had profound implications. They've influenced everything from the design of machinery to the development of materials, and even our understanding of geological phenomena like earthquakes. So, as we've seen, the 20th century was a period of intense scrutiny into the world of friction. It was an era that took us from the macroscopic to the microscopic, from the observable to the invisible, and from the tangible to the abstract. And with that, we land in the present day. Our understanding of friction has come a long way from the early empirical observations. The trip has been long and winding, but every step has brought us closer to understanding this force that's so integral to our everyday lives. Understanding friction is not just a matter of scientific curiosity, it has real-world implications. Friction is more than just that annoying force that slows down your skateboard. It's a fundamental principle that affects our daily lives in many ways. Let's start with a simple example. Have you ever noticed how your hands get warm when you rub them together on a cold day? That's friction at work, converting kinetic energy, the energy of your moving hands, into thermal energy or heat. In fact, without friction, we wouldn't be able to start fires, drive cars, or even walk. That's right, every step you take, every move you make, you're using friction. But it's not all about warmth and movement. Friction also helps to reduce wear and damage to components. Consider the brakes on your car or bike. They work by applying friction to slow down the wheels. Without friction, stopping would be a real challenge. But too much friction can also cause parts to wear out faster. That's why we use lubricants like oil or grease to reduce friction and extend the lifespan of machinery. Moreover, friction plays a crucial role in engineering and construction. For instance, it's the friction between the ground and a building's foundation that keeps the structure from sliding. Similarly, the friction between the components of a bridge or skyscraper is what holds the structure together. Even in the realm of technology and electronics, friction is a key player. For instance, the read-write head in a hard disk drive floats on a thin layer of air, a balance of friction and air pressure that allows data to be read from and written to the disk. In essence, understanding and managing friction is critical in almost every aspect of our lives. From the shoes we wear to the cars we drive, from the buildings we live in to the devices we use, friction is everywhere. It's a seemingly simple force, but its implications are profound and wide-ranging. So, the next time you experience friction, remember the centuries of scientific discovery that have helped us understand this seemingly simple yet complex force.